Thank you, Chair. I can confirm the meeting is now live.
Great, thank you, Simon. Welcome, everyone, to the Heritage Advisory Committee August 27th, 2025 meeting. Let's begin with a land acknowledgement. So the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. And on to number two. So the approval of minutes, we have June 18th and the 23rd of July. So just gonna ask if there's any errors or omissions that anyone would like to note. None being,
So
call for a
approve and
motion.
circulate it.
Pardon?
Approve and circulate it.
Yeah, and seconder.
I second.
Thank you, Nancy. Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those those opposed? One, great, motion passes. For the approval of the order of business and approval of any additions or deletions. Simon, are there any additions or deletions to be noted?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to committee, I have received no requests through the clerk's office for any additions or deletions today.
Great. And would any member like to move any items? Great. Being call for the motion to approve the order of business.
I so move.
And a seconder.
I second it.
Thank you. Right. All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. So there's no business arising out of the minutes. So I'd like to call for the declaration of any conflicts of interest from the committee members. None, great. There is, for the consideration of deferred business, there is none identified. And for correspondence, petitions, and delegations, Simon, have there been any received by the clerk's office?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to committee, I have not received any correspondence to circulate today, nor any petitions through the clerk's office.
Great. And Simon, the committee members, is there any petitions that you'd like to bring forward?
Again, through the clerk's office, we've received no petition.
Great. And on to our first report. So item 9.1.1, Plan App -2023-00150 is the Heritage Development Agreement for 5522-5540 Russell Street, Halifax. That is St. Mark's Church. And I'd like to invite Carter Beaupre McPhee to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you could just confirm that my screen is sharing and you can all see it.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. So good afternoon to the chair and committee members. My name is Carter Beaupre McPhee, Planner 3 Heritage, and today I'll be presenting to you Plan App 2023-00150, the application for a Heritage Development Agreement at 5522 to 5540 Russell Street in Halifax. This is an application by WM Fairs on behalf of the property owner to enter into a heritage development agreement permitting a 10-story plus mechanical and amenity penthouse, multi-unit residential building, and the retention and rehabilitation of the registered heritage building known as St. Mark's Church. If this application sounds familiar, that's because most heritage DA applications also include a concurrent substantial alteration application. And in this case, the subalt was reviewed by HAC in August of 2024 and was later approved by Regional Council. So we're back now with the Heritage DA portion. Here's a look at the site in question. It fronts on Gottingen Street and is flanked by Russell Street. Also provided is a photo of the Heritage Building. In this aerial view, you can see the fairly large lot outlined in red, with the church building at 5522 Russell Street taking up the eastern half of the lot, and the western half is taken up by a small surface parking lot and the St. Mark's Community Center building at 5540 Russell Street. St. Mark's Church was registered in 1995, and the heritage value of this property is embodied in the Gothic Revival style church building designed by architect Walter Johannes Busch and constructed circa 1920 to 1921 to replace the previous church, which was destroyed in the Halifax explosion. The present church served as the garrison church for the Royal Canadian Regiment and Royal Canadian Navy until 1970, and is a strong example of the Gothic Revival style in ecclesiastical architecture, exhibiting a high level of heritage integrity. Here we have a rendering of the proposal as viewed from the intersection of Gottingen Street and Russell Street. The DA proposal includes the construction of a new 10-story plus mechanical and amenity penthouse multi-unit residential building, which will be physically separate from the Heritage Church building and located on the western portion of the property. It will contain up to 82 units and include underground parking for between 18 and 41 vehicles. 3 surface parking spaces will also be provided for use by the church, with all parking accessed via a shared driveway fronting on Russell Street. Also proposed as part of this project is the partial removal of a non-original 1960s rear addition to the church building, and of course the rehabilitation of the church building itself. The St. Mark's Community Center, located at 5540 Russell Street, will be demolished to facilitate this development. However, this circa 1976 warehouse-style building does not have heritage value and is not a character-defining element of the property. The daycare services that this building once housed have been relocated to a nearby facility on Roby Street. On the left, we have the site plan showing the proposed location for the new building, as well as the shared driveway, surface parking, and underground parking ramp. And on the right, we have the eastern elevation as seen from Gottingen Street, showing the church in front of the new building. And here we have the northern elevation as seen from Russell Street. Here we have the southern elevation as seen from the neighboring properties on McCarra Street. And here on the left, we have the eastern elevation again, but this time an unobstructed view. This is the side facing the church building. And on the right is the western elevation, which faces the Russell Food Equipment Building, a commercial warehouse use. And here is the preliminary landscape plan, which proposes to retain the existing vegetation around the church building and to plant a landscape buffer along the southern property line. The enabling policy for this proposal is Regional Center Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy Policy CHR7, which enables a development agreement on registered heritage property within the regional center for any development or use not otherwise permitted by the land use bylaw, including those which exceed maximum floor area ratios or exceed maximum building heights. In reviewing such applications, council considers that the development should maintain the heritage value of the property, that impacts on adjacent uses should be minimized, that new construction should substantially maintain the predominant street wall height, setback, scale, and rhythm of its surroundings, that the proposal should meet pedestrian wind impact, shadow impact, public view and view terminus policies, and incentive or bonus zoning provisions wherever applicable. And the level of investment in conservation should be proportional with the additional development rights afforded by this DA, among other considerations outlined in the policy review provided in attachment B to the staff report. The subject property is zoned corridor with a lowered 11-meter height limit owing to its status as a registered heritage property. The surrounding neighborhood is a mixed-use environment zoned mostly corridor and established residential 3, with some higher order residential 1, institutional, and parks properties. There is also a non-conforming commercial warehouse use located immediately to the west of the subject property. Building forms in this neighborhood range in scale from single-family homes to 7, 9, and 10-story plus penthouse apartment buildings, commercial warehouses, schools, and the Stadacona base. This development agreement is being pursued primarily to allow greater maximum height, as well as step back and setback flexibility, allowing for a scale comparable to other recent and ongoing developments in the neighborhood, as well as offsetting the additional cost of rehabilitation for the heritage building. The rehabilitation of the heritage building at 5522 Russell Street, St. Mark's Church, is proposed to include the following measures: removal of a portion of the 1960s rear addition and restoration of the western exterior wall, repair and sealing of foundation cracks, rehabilitation of deteriorated brick masonry, exterior doors and window moldings, and the belfry and steeple, and improvements to thermal performance and moisture protection, among other measures. All these rehabilitative measures are written into the terms of the development agreement. In October of 2024, 287 mailouts were sent to residents within the notification boundary, and 21 responses were received. A summary of public feedback is provided in Attachment C to the staff report. Feedback primarily expressed concerns regarding the original 12-story height of the proposed development, among other concerns such as traffic congestion and construction impacts. In response to feedback, the proposal was revised down to 10 stories, and the podium was revised with a more pedestrian-oriented design, and surface parking was added for use by the church. Construction impacts, traffic, and parking are addressed in the enabling policy section of the staff report. A complete review of the enabling policy is provided in Attachment B to this report, and in accordance with the enabling policy, staff find that the proposal retains all character-defining heritage elements and enhances them through conservation investment that is commensurate with the proposed additional development rights being awarded. The proposal represents an urban infill project in a well-serviced mixed-use, mixed-density neighborhood with impacts on adjacent uses, especially residential uses, mitigated through strategic use of setbacks and stepbacks, a human-scaled street wall with grade-oriented units, and a landscape buffer along the southern property line. Although the zone has no minimum parking requirement, the agreement sets a stricter range of 18 to 41 spaces, allowing for 1 or 2 levels of underground parking. Traffic analysis shows reduced trips compared to the previous daycare use, with no significant impact on street parking anticipated. Finally, the applicant must follow regulations for noise, lighting, construction, and encroachments, and no such exemptions are granted under this agreement. A standards and guidelines review was completed through the prior substantial alteration application and approved by Regional Council on September 10th, 2024. The standards review is also included in Attachment B to the staff report. Perhaps most relevant is Standard 11, which states that when creating any new additions or new construction, one must conserve the heritage value and character-defining elements and make the new work compatible with, subordinate to, and distinguishable from the historic place. In this case, compatibility is achieved by taking design cues from the heritage building in the street wall design, such as rhythm, materials, and height, and by the simplified composition and neutral colored cladding of the new building, maintaining the church's visual prominence. Subordination is achieved through the retention of the entire church building, the siting of the new building separate and to the rear of the church, and the use of a 4.4 meter separation distance between the two buildings and a further 2 meter step back above the street wall. And finally, the reduced 10-story height of the proposal. Distinguishability is achieved through the clearly modern design of the new building and the physical separation of the two buildings. Again, more analysis is provided in the policy review in Attachment B, but staff find that the proposed development is consistent with the intent of applicable regional plan policies CH5 and G14A, and by extension consistent with applicable policies and actions from HRM's priorities plans listed here. In conclusion, staff find that the proposed development is reasonably consistent with the intent of applicable policies. Currently, the application is at the HAC recommendation stage. If HAC recommends in favor, it will proceed to first reading at Halifax and West Community Council and then to a public hearing before decision. The recommendation is before you now. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, Carter. So, let's see. Paste the motion. Is someone able to have a mover for the motion? I can read it in
I'll
the.
move it. I'll move it if nobody else.
Thanks.
Okay.
Are you able to read it in?
I am. I see it right here. I move that Halifax, or I'm sorry. I move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that Halifax and West Community Council, one, give notice of motion to consider the proposed development agreement as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated July 7, 2025, to enable the construction of a 10-story multi-unit residential building on the registered heritage property and schedule a public hearing. And two, approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially the same as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated July 7, 2025, and three, require the development agreement be signed by the property owner within 120 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever. Sorry, I lost my spot. Whichever is later, otherwise this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end. Can I get a seconder? No.
Yeah,
Can we get-
I'll second.
Thank you, Jason. Great. So is there any questions? Oh, I see. Oh, sorry. Hensby, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, the development agreement says about all residential, so that there's no allowances for any commercial development on the ground level floor? Is on the street level? Like, normally you see these properties being built with a combination of commercial on the street and then residential above, but this appears to be all residential. Can that be confirmed?
Certainly through the chair to the councillor, yes, I can confirm this new building is entirely residential units. And at grade, there are grade-related units which open out to the street.
So I assume they're gonna all be, those like grade, will be all accessible units and stuff to meet the accessibility standards and everything else like that?
As far as accessibility, that would probably be reviewed at the permitting stage.
Right. Okay, then. Sounds great. Thanks.
Thank you. And Joanne?
Hi, I have two questions actually. The first one is we are changing the setback that is allowable to 0.3 of a meter. This is very similar to this proposed structure is very similar to other buildings that have gone up in the neighborhood. And what is being created in this area is completely a moonscape. There is not enough room to put trees, shrubs. There's a little bit of grass, and that's all. So for these blocks in this area of Halifax, where Councillor Hensby is quite correct, there are no retail spaces in the neighboring buildings that are going up close to this as well. We are resulting in a moonscape. So I would just like to know why we are allowing this decrease in setback so that we have no green space on these developments coming up. That's question one. Is there a reason why we continue to change the setback?
Certainly, I can do my best to answer that. So through the chair to the committee member, the reduced front step back in this case is part of the strategic siting of the building to reduce impacts on especially adjacent residential uses, which is part of the policy that has to be part of the enabling policy that needs to be met. And as well, the maintenance of consistent street wall with surrounding properties where the neighboring property, the Russell Hendricks building, is also quite close to its front property line. In fact, I believe it's on its front property line. This would technically be more in line with the predominant front setback. But the main purpose being that this allows us to move the new building further away from those lower intensity, low density residential uses to the south of this property. to try and mitigate impacts on them.
So to break that down, you're trying to minimize impact on other properties, but that means that their footprint is actually larger for the building. Is that not correct?
So the footprint is larger than well, it's closer to the front of the road than could be permitted through as of right, yes.
Yes. So therefore, no green space.
So the developer is proposing to retain all of the green space around the existing church. At the moment, there is very limited green space in the area where this new development is going. It's almost entirely surface parking lot, and then a very small green space in front of roughly 2/3 of the community center building.
Yeah.
Certainly, if things such as lack of green space or snow clearance or anything of that nature were a problem for HRM right-of-way, then they would be able to consider that in road recapitalization, but that is a little bit outside of scope for this.
Sure. Okay, so secondary question is, where is the proposal for the repairs or the rehabilitation of the church? And are they going to be in keeping with the current materials, or is it going to be whatever the developer chooses?
Certainly, through the chair to the committee member. So the rehabilitation of the church will have to, one, include the elements which are outlined specifically in the terms of the development agreement, so they are held to those. But in addition, they have to be carried out in accordance with the approved substantial alteration application, which was reviewed by the Heritage Advisory Committee and approved by Council in 2024. And so that's sort of where the specifics of what techniques and what changes and all the details of the rehabilitation, that's sort of where those get hashed out, was back in the sub-alt.
Mm-hmm. So just to break it down, is it going to be consistent with the building, or is it going to have vinyl siding on it just to look like what it could have been? You know, I'm just trying to get to the crux of it. If it's going to be good materials, or is it going to be whatever they can throw at it?
Yes, so through the chair to the committee member, in terms of rehabilitation for the church, the brick is expected to be repaired with brick that would be in kind, so same style, same materials. And so I wouldn't expect a dramatic departure in the appearance of the church. That would itself be not in keeping with the standards and guidelines, and also not in keeping with the approved sub-alt, which would potentially open up the possibility of prosecution under the Heritage Property Act, because that would constitute a substantial alteration that wasn't approved.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I see Paul Clark.
Yeah, okay. I got 4 items, so it's going to take some time. First of all, what was meant by it's similar, the new building is similar to the church? 3 categories: rhythm, material, and height. Please explain each of those. I'd like the explanation of each of those in relation to the church.
Sure thing. Just a moment while I grab the correct document here. So in this case, the new building features a street wall that is comprised of vertically oriented repeating bays, referencing the repeating window bay and buttress rhythm of the northern side of the church building. This street wall is also proposed to be clad in brick as a reference to the materiality and human scale design of the church, although not the same brick, in order to retain a certain level of differentiation. And the 3-story height of the street wall is informed by the church building, as this 3 stories serves as an approximate average between the cornice line of the main hall and the apse, and the roof line of the apse and cornice line of the northern tower.
Would you be able to, or put up an illustration showing the street wall?
Certainly, yes.
please?
Just one moment.
Carter, I'm not sure if you're talking, but you're on mute. If you are.
My apologies. So here is our street wall, as seen from Russell Street.
No, the street wall is where?
Is the lower 3 stories of the new building.
Okay, the lower 3 stories.
Mhm.
Okay, I gotcha.
And then above the 3rd story, there would be a 2-meter step back where the building pushes back further.
Like a step.
Yes.
So you're saying the street wall has the approximate height of the horizontal member that's above the windows, above those 5 windows? Is that what you're saying?
So it's an average of a number of different datum lines on the church because churches such as this have a pretty unusual nature for a street wall where the roof is so steeply pitched. In this case, it's taking an average between the cornice line of the church itself, which is sort of just above the repeating windows there, and then the cornice of the tower, which is just above the 3 small windows below the
Right.
belfry.
Gotcha.
And then it's also sort of roughly the average between the top of the apse, which is the sort of rear portion of the church, and the cornice, like I said, where the main windows on the side are. So it's sort of trying to average between there to create a fairly cohesive street wall, despite the unusual design of the church making that fairly difficult. It's also consistent with the street wall of the Russell Hendricks building on the other side as well.
Yeah, it's difficult to interpret all that horizontal as far as being one item. That's what I'm trying to say. It's difficult to see any unity, at least for me. Okay.
Did you have another question?
Moving on to number 2. Is this within the scope? Does the building have a fitness room, a social room, and a terrace on the roof?
So I can speak to that. So there is an mechanical and amenity penthouse proposed on the roof, which would include non-habitable uses. So that could include amenity spaces such as gym. The specifics of the amenity spaces have not been determined, nor are they being necessarily regulated through this DA. The amenity space is actually being essentially regulated through the penthouse regulations of the land use bylaw instead.
Okay, thank you.
And also the provision of sufficient amenity space is also being regulated per the bylaw rather than being deviated from using the DA.
Okay. Now, another item, with the church being there, and churches usually reach out to assist with the poor and the difficult and the people who've given a rough hand in life. I'm wondering if the matter has been given into consideration to have some affordable housing in the new building.
Through the chair to the committee member, there is no affordable housing component as part of this particular development. I do believe that would probably cause considerable issues with the financial viability of this proposal. It may require a larger building in order to justify that. But in this particular case, I can at least provide confirmation that the church congregation intends to continue to use the church building throughout the course of development, and important community functions such as the food bank are intended to be carried on throughout the development.
Okay, so no affordable housing.
And Mr. Chair, I just this is Jesse Morton, Principal Planner. Just wanted to jump in there quickly. You did, Mr. Clark mentioned before whether this is kind of in scope or not. So I guess the key thing to consider is the last question's kind of drifting a little bit along the boundaries of what the Heritage Advisory Committee should be discussing. The purpose of this meeting today is really to look at the proposal and how it impacts the property's heritage value. It's not necessarily to suss out some of the details of the interior uses of the building or things like affordable housing that are outside of the policy. So just kind of keep that in mind as we move through some further questions. The discussion should really focus on the heritage merits of the application.
Very well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. No
With
problem.
that in mind, I won't go into the last one had to do with parking, how it went from 18 to 45. At 45, there's a whole floor there that may or may not be built. But anyway, that's outside the scope. Let's move on. Thank you.
Thanks. And Megan?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to express some concern regarding the sort of portion of the building that on the elevation that fronts the back of the church and sort of comes up in behind it there. I just am a bit worried that it seems to be, at least from my point of view, detracting from sort of the spire of the church a bit, especially because it's not, at least when you look at it straight on, it's not really aligned, and it does, in that darker material, stand out quite a bit against the new building in the back there. So I guess as sort of relating to what Jesse said, concern slightly regarding the building's impact on the heritage value of the building and the property is just potentially that element specifically detracting from that front elevation of the church, and the two spires being both character defining elements as well.
Thanks for that, Megan. Was it just a kind of a comment to note, or did we?
I guess I'm not sure if at this point, if that it is could be reviewed or revised, or if anyone else sort of feels similarly, but just sort of stating some concern from my perspective there about whether that, I guess, that specific element is being clad in a very contrasting sort of dark material, and it's sort of misalignment from that sort of main spire at the corner right now. So mostly statement.
No, I definitely hear you on that. Definitely from the Schedule C render, whatever that is. Like I could see, but definitely from like the street view, I don't think it's really noticeable. But yeah, I could see where that concern may be. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I see Carter, hands up.
Sure, I can certainly provide some clarification that's hopefully useful to the committee. So that particular element of the building is one of the stairwells. It's the secondary stairwell in order to meet egress requirements. I can't necessarily speak to the design reasoning for why necessarily the architect would have chosen to make that contrasting, but I would say that, and I can probably bring up a pedestrian view from the renders, which wasn't included in the presentation, but may be of use, which it's showing the pedestrian view from the street looking towards the church. And what you'll find is when it's not in an elevation where the perspective is essentially as if you were standing, 20 feet in the air looking directly at it. If you're looking at a pedestrian view, the church is really obscuring considerably more of that face of the building. I can try and get that image for you if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely the alignments I can see from those sort of pedestrian renders not being much of an issue as much as when you're sort of standing straight in front of it. I do still find that, yeah, like I said, because it is clad in the black panel as opposed to the sort of lighter panel, it does visually stand out quite prominently on that existing facade, which I don't know if anyone shares the same opinion, but in my opinion, does detract slightly from the prominence of the spire on the church. So I don't know whether, yeah, I understand the stairs not an element that can always easily be relocated as far as the alignment is concerned, but I don't know whether maybe, I do imagine personally that if that was clad in the lighter material, it would potentially have a lot less prominence to the eye as opposed to it currently standing out quite a bit when you turn the corner.
So I've managed to find that photo. Hopefully this is of use to the committee. This is a pedestrian view from Goggin Street, which will hopefully put into perspective a bit better how the church will remain the more prominent feature, at least from this important front view.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I see Ruby.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with pedestrian view too. I also kind of agree. It's so dark because the rest of the building is so light. If the rest of the building, the cladding was a little bit darker, that darker cladding, because they chose a dark gray, wouldn't stand out quite as much. But because it's the stark white with the dark cladding, also nitpick. Not that it's not super important, but it does stand out a lot, and that's looking at pedestrian view 2 and even 3, where you have the church, but then you're also drawn to the back building just because of that heavy contrast. I don't know if anyone agrees, but I don't find anything else offensive
That's Ruby.
about the building.
And Hensby.
I had the first impressions the same as Ruby and Meg in regards to the that dark staircase cladding does distract from the view of the church and stuff. If that was a light panel cladding, the church would stand up more prominently, I think, from the street view than this dark line behind it. So that was my first impression too. I know the dark cladding is trying to mimic the color of the roofing of the spires and stuff, but it also distracts from the church. So if there's an opportunity to reevaluate that dark panel cladding to a lighter paneling, that way I think Ruby and Megan are right, is that it gives more prominence back to the church for a street view.
I seem to have lost visual.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Paul. Carter did stop sharing his screen a little bit ago. Okay. And then Nancy Hartling.
I just want to say that I personally really like it. To be honest with you, I think that it's visually, I think it's helpful. Because it also draws my eyes up. But if I think of the size of a church for me at the bottom of the street, there's no way that my eyes could take in all of that all at once. You know, so those are just kind of my thoughts. When you think of like the size of that church, it would be very, very hard to take in visually what we're thinking about. I think, but I don't find it problematic the way that it is, but that's my opinion. So.
Thank you. Hensby, you still have your hand up there? No. Jason Cook.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I guess I think from a through the heritage lens, I think it's hard to be concerned about it for kind of the reasons in the report, and especially the setback. It's quite a big lot in an area with comparably sized buildings as a new development, almost all around it, and really neighboring the Russell Hendricks building on the corner, which is a kind of warehousey type of building. So I guess although I think a lot of people raise good points on various elements of it, I think given the heritage lens, which is our lens, I think it's hard not to see real concerns with it. And I assume, and maybe this isn't a factor at all, I assume this will provide probably some benefits to the church in terms of revenues and ability to sustain. So that has some, as someone who lives in the area, that probably has a lot of community value. That's probably not a consideration for us, but I guess certainly from the heritage, it's hard to see with that level of setback. And I think a lot of people wouldn't even think they were the same lot. Looking at it, it's set back quite significantly. And I think that one picture from Gottingen, I think one was actually probably a little more accurate of those of us that would be walking or driving by. I don't think you're going to connect these buildings at all when they're built, to be honest. But so I guess saying in the end in favor.
Great. Thank you for those words. And Nancy Hartland, did you still have a
Sorry
question?
about that. I forgot to lower my hand.
No, all good, all
Other
good.
than thank you. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
No. That being, any further commentary, questions, concerns, or should we put this to a vote? Yeah, great. So all those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those opposed? Great, motion carries. All right, thank you, everyone. So there are no added items. So the date of the next meeting is September 24th, 2025. And with that, thank you everyone for your time. I just need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Great. Thanks, everyone. See you September 24th.
Thank you all.
Chair.
Thank you. Great.